Donald Trump has touched down in London ahead of an historic NATO summit.
Yes, and he didn't look particularly pleased as he stepped off Air Force One late last night, hand in hand with First Lady Melania Trump. They'll head to Buckingham Palace for a reception with the Queen tonight, then NATO talks tomorrow, but things could get a little awkward. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is trying to distance himself from the US President ahead of next week's election. He's even reportedly asked the President not to endorse him publicly because he thinks it could be damaging. Problem is, Trump is highly unpredictable. He doesn't like being told what to do. Having said that, he has a bigger issue brewing back home.
A real scare today at a high school in Waukesha, Wisconsin. That's near Milwaukee. A student armed with a gun, students all around. Then in a tense standoff with an officer. Authorities say the student then pulled the gun on them. An officer shot him. Frightened students on lockdown finally reunited with their anxious parents waiting outside.
Tonight, tears and tense moments of panic and chaos at this Wisconsin high school. 10:07 a.m., the first emergency call of a 17-year-old student who showed up to his classroom at Waukesha South High armed with a gun. Teachers and school officials immediately going into lockdown, students scrambling to hide and take cover. Officials say a resource officer at the school, along with other officers who responded, tried to get the student to put the gun down. That's when terrified students inside heard gunfire, officers claiming they were forced to shoot when the teen took aim.
Well, China warned of serious retaliation for US support of Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters, and it has banned the US Navy from docking in Hong Kong. China has also sanctioned US non-profit groups which have been monitoring the unrest in the financial hub.
In response to the U.S.'s unreasonable actions, the Chinese government has decided to suspend the review of U.S. military maritime vessels in planes visiting Hong Kong with the immediate effect.
A powerful typhoon has ravaged the Philippines, forcing tens of thousands of people to evacuate. One person has been killed as the storm destroyed homes and businesses and shut down major airports.
It rolled in at full speed and full volume. Typhoon Kamuri made its mark at midnight local time, slamming into the country's centre with gusts of more than 200 kilometres an hour. A domestic airport in Legazpi stood little chance against the wind. Also defenceless homes, businesses, trees and power lines. Street after street covered in debris. The ceiling of this luxury hotel gave way as its windows were blown in. Guests forced to evacuate in the dead of night.
The Dragon has once again dared India. The Indian Navy chased away a Chinese spy ship near Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now, this is west of Port Blair. The Chinese research vessel Shiyan-1 was engaged in suspected spying activities, and this is inside India's exclusive economic zone. That's what we are being told. It was then asked to leave by frontline Indian warships. Chief of the Naval Staff, Admiral Karambir Singh, said 7 to 8 Chinese ships are currently present in the Indian Ocean region. He said that the Indian Navy was aware of the increased Chinese presence and is constantly monitoring the situation.
For the next couple of days, this is the man in the hot seat. Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg has the unenviable task of chairing a meeting of NATO's leaders at a time the alliance faces big challenges. This gathering in London is supposed to mark NATO's 70th birthday. Its first headquarters were actually here in the British capital, in an area that now houses embassies. There are three main things, though, souring the mood. First, the Trump factor. The US leader arriving here at London's Stansted Airport doesn't like summits, and he has a particular dislike of NATO summits, repeatedly claiming other members aren't paying their way.
Countrywide unrest, an internet blackout that cut Iranians off from the rest of the world. But now it's time for political engagement. They have to be aged between 30 and 75 and hold at least a master's degree. Potential candidates are then vetted by the Guardian Council, a constitutional watchdog. The protest followed an increase in fuel prices and took place in 29 out of the 31 provinces, according to officials. It's unclear how many people died during the demonstrations. Amnesty International puts the figure at 161, with thousands arrested. The Iranian government says those figures are exaggerated. The unrest has prompted the Guardian Council to reconsider their approach to the elections, which are scheduled for February 21st.
There's a lot of news today, and now let's go to the FAA. It's unveiled a plan to take over the 737 MAX certification process. This is something that had been left up to Boeing to figure out for themselves, but now the feds are saying they will step in to make sure it gets done right. Call me crazy, but isn't that what the FAA was supposed to do in the first place? Why were they leaving it up to the manufacturer like Boeing to police itself? Joining us now to help us understand the answer to those questions is Jamie Finch, former official at the NTSB. Am I crazy for thinking that they should have been doing it to begin with?
No, this is their job. That is what they're being paid to do and so forth. But let's be realistic. I mean, the FAA does not have the resources to be able to certify like it needs to be. So they created this process with the industry, but everybody had to be good players for this to work.
Hospitals are going after patients with unpaid bills by sending police to their homes, suing them, garnishing their wages, even threatening them with jail time. Why is this happening? Because healthcare in America, even for workers with private health insurance provided by their employers, is not covering enough, and they're left with bills that they simply can't afford.
So as just one example of the phenomenon of hospitals suing patients for their medical bills, we have right here in Southwest Virginia, pretty close by, a hospital named Ballad Health. They're suing patients for these unpaid medical bills. Now, in 2018, Ballad filed over 6,700 medical debt lawsuits against its patients, and the New York Times says that that number is going up every year. And that's just one example of these hospitals suing these patients. They say, hey, we just want to stay afloat. We don't want to close. So some of these hospitals are choosing to go to the court to get these debt collections.
The people on the inside are going to keep coming up with these ridiculous excuses, like his arm was elongated, or the photo was doctored, or he came to New York to break up with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, come on. I'm calling BS on this, because that's what it is. He knows what happened. I know what happened. And there's only one of us telling the truth, and I know that's me. He asked me to dance. He is the most hideous dancer I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was horrible, and this guy was sweating all over me. Like, his sweat was like, it was raining basically everywhere, and I was just like, whoa, grossed out from it. But I knew I had to keep him happy, because that's what Jeffrey and Ghislaine would expect from me.